Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Black Moon Lilith square opposition or inconjunct one's natal North Node. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve the Black Moon Lilith, it can be about trauma, suffering, the negative manifestation of the sign of nefarious and fixated energy. Now, when transit Black Moon Lilith is basically making an adverse aspect to the natal North Node. Well, I'm going to elaborate on that. When I say basically adverse aspect, okay, squares and oppositions, of course, those aspects are negative and adverse in astrology. Now, the inconjunct aspect is neutral, but neutral aspects can have good and bad qualities in them, coupled with the fact that an inconjunct can often require an adjustment or a transition, and that in turn can cause some exasperation and tension. So basically, collectively, I do see this as an adverse transit. Anyway, when transit Black Moon Lilith basically makes an adverse aspect to one's natal North Node, well, may manifest in trauma, suffering, negative manifestation of the sign of nefarious and fixated energy. This might conflict with one's future. It might be a time too where you might be overly fixated and obsessed with your future at this time. If the natal, say if the North Node is in Capricorn in the 10th house as an example, it could be some career that might be, it might be a business career or a career in accounting or information technology, dentistry, masonry, carpentry, even general mundane work. This could be something you don't want, when you're talking about fixation and obsession. It's good to have focus and strong concentration on things, but to become overly fixated on something, so dominated by something where it basically monopolizes your existence, then you become oblivious to other things, everything else practically, that's obviously no good. But anyway, and the thing too is, North Node is about our destiny, where we're moving toward. And the thing about this is, if you're going through some physical or emotional trauma or suffering, it may make it more difficult to pursue that, to really go after what you feel you're destined for in your life. If you have the North Node in Gemini and or the third house, it could be doing something with writing or communications. It could be something connected with manual dexterity, such as auto refrigeration mechanics. And another thing is that if you're dealing, the Black Moon Lilith is also associated with what can put one in a strong state of fright or trepidation. And it could be a situation where you might be dealing with something in your life that has caused some fear in your life at this time. And it might be something where if you have the transit of Black Moon Lilith in the 5th house as an example, maybe it has something to do with actually maybe fear of love. Maybe there's somebody in your love life that you actually have become literally afraid of, as another example. And the thing about this is, if you're going through that kind of distraction, naturally it may be harder to develop the positive, the qualities and attributes that are associated with your North Node placement. You could be dealing with some very formidable adversary, a powerful enemy as well, and it might be a situation where it obviously can conflict with where you feel, where you're trying to develop those positive attributes in your life at this time. And this is and this placement obviously can be very very tough because of that. And another thing too, this is also North Node can be connected with our mission and our purpose. And the thing about this transit is, if you're dealing with something nefarious in your life at the time of this transit, naturally it could curtail where you feel your mission, your purpose is, where you feel you're drawn to at this point in time. Again, if you're dealing with a physical or emotional trauma, or there's some abusive situation in some cases, the transit Black Moon Lilith, say if it's an Aries in the 7th house, it could be something, an acrimonious or contentious situation with a marriage partner, which is not excluding physical violence or some kind of form of physical abuse, at this time. And the thing about it is, and it can, the Black Moon Lilith can, when you have it basically making an adverse aspect to natal north node, it can curtail what you're trying to do, conflict with what you feel your mission, your purpose is at this point in time. If you have, say, the transit of the, say if you have the natal north node, say if it's in, Aquarius, in your 11th house, it could be about expressing humanitarian and selfless qualities in groups and clubs and organizations, maybe even for things associated with human rights. Another thing too, again, the North Node is associated with where we're moving toward, where we feel we're directed to. So when you have this transit, guard against, again, becoming overly fixated or obsessed with where you feel you're moving toward, where you feel you're directed to at the time of this transit. And if you're dealing with any, could be some negative energy, very negative energy in your life that you're trying to cope with, or whether it's physical or emotional trauma or suffering, this is where it might be harder for you to move toward where you're directed to, where you feel you're directed to at this time. If you have, say, your natal north node in Taurus and or the second house in your chart, it could be just general self-reliance and generating your own income, and it might be harder to do so if you are experiencing some physical or emotional trauma. And especially on a physical level, naturally, when you have something of a physical nature, that can be that can hinder you from really doing a lot of different things, unfortunately. And and it wouldn't exclude matters that are pertaining to the North Node. So anyway, now also too, the North Node is associated with issues that you may have to address and confront. And the thing about it is, you may not want to address or confront issues associated with the Black Moon Lilith, whether it's expressing something very negative associated with the placement. It could be something nefarious in your life, or some kind of very powerful, somebody that is a very powerful adversary, or formidable adversary at this time. And say if you have the transit of the Black Moon Lilith in Leo in the 4th house as an example, it could be a very arrogant, bombastic, domineering home or family member at this time, or it's somebody that's really hurting, doing something to hurt you in terms of your your emotional security at this time. Say if the transit Black Moon Lilith is in Scorpio in the 4th house, it could be a situation where maybe there's somebody that you might be dealing with, some stalker that's really negatively impacting your emotional security, and it may be conflicting with other. It might be something that you really don't want to address and confront, but it's something that you may have to, unfortunately, in that example. Now, the North Node is also associated with what we're learning and aspiring to be at this time. And the thing is too, at this time of this the transit, again, if you're dealing with something negative in your life, it might be conflicting with what you are actually learning and aspiring to be. I mean, if you have, say for example, the transit, Black Moon Lilith is in Sagittarius and your natal North Node placement is in Gemini, naturally you have that energy very diametrically opposed. The natal North Node placement can be about really you're learning to develop, you're really trying to aspire to be somebody that has manifold, diverse views on things. But the transit of the Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius, on the other hand, can be something where it's more about targeting one belief or one philosophy and not listening to anything maybe anybody else would say. So it's really something where that can be a tough transit as an example. So anyway, now another thing is, another way that this transit may manifest, it could be where you may become overly fixated on developing the positive attributes and qualities of the placement. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, now as an example, if the North Node, say if it's in your natal North Node is in Aquarius in the 6th house, it can be, developing unobtrusive and selfless, which is Aquarius qualities, in the daily routine, which is the 6th house. Now, another way this transit may be expressed, there may be more difficulty in keeping what you want suppressed, which is the Black Moon Lilith, from people that could be prominent in your future, which is associated with the North Node. Let's say, for example, if the transit Black Moon Lilith is in the zodiac sign Cancer in the 12th house, it could be perhaps maybe there was a family history, or history of family, which is the zodiac sign Cancer, might have some mental illness, which is the 12th house. Now, also to trauma, which is associated with the Black Moon Lilith, may adversely affect what you are learning and aspiring to be, which is connected with the North Node. Now, let's say, for example, if the natal North Node is in Aries in the 11th house, it could be perhaps a fighter, which is Aries, for human rights, which is associated with the 11th house. Now, also, too, people that are prominent in your life that may play a provocative role in your life may conflict with issues that you may need to address and confront. Now, let's say, for example, if the natal North Node, let's say it's in Gemini in the 1st house, it could be some issues, physical related issues with the arms, the hands, the shoulders, the nerves. It could be something with the lungs or breathing at this time. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.